Hello Year 11, welcome to this second lesson looking at the effects of economic development on the quality of life for the people living in Nigeria. So this lesson is following on from last lesson, and last lesson we looked at some of those positives of the economic development and we looked at how it was improving life in Nigeria. This lesson we are looking at how those improvements in quality of life have not been equal for everybody. So if you remember, last lesson we sort of finished off by looking at these two pictures and pointing out that although there is economic development in Nigeria and the middle classes, so people with a reasonable amount of wealth, are growing, there's still lots of people living in poverty. So 60% of the population are still living in poverty, and the gap between the wealthy people and the poor people is getting bigger and bigger as time goes by, when ideally what you want is for that gap to be shrinking, because you want the economic development to help the most vulnerable people in your country, as well as improve levels of wealth for people who have already got a bit of money. So we need to understand exactly what's going on. So the economy in Nigeria over recent years has grown significantly. So in 2019, it had a growth rate of 2.5%. Now that might not sound like much, but if you are aware of the kind of figures we use when we're talking about economic growth, 2.5% is quite a lot. So in the UK, we only had 0.2% growth over the same time period. So you can see that Nigeria's economy is growing much, much faster than ours is here in the UK. Yet despite that, we've got over 112 million people still living in poverty. And that wealth that's being created by that growth is centred in just a few places. So lots of the wealth is in the south, in the Lagos area, where you've got the big banking sectors, the big retail sectors, and where Lagos has traditionally grown up as the area where there is a lot of wealth, because it's got that history with the docks and all the finance and all the manufacturing that was happening in that Lagos area. Now, as you know, Lagos is no longer the capital. They built a new capital, Abuja, further inland to try to spread that wealth out. And that has worked in the fact that there is wealth in the capital, Abuja. There's some very, very wealthy people there. But that wealth, again, is very concentrated. The surrounding rural areas, so the surrounding countryside and the north, is still really poor, okay? A large amount of the growth has been in the services sector. So we're talking about work where you provide a service for people. So things like finance, education, retail, office work. And in order to get a job in those areas, you need to have an education, okay? You need to have good qualifications. You're not going to move to Lagos or Abuja from the poor rural areas with no qualifications, no education, and walk into a well-paying job in finance or get a job in an office. It doesn't work like that, okay? So what that means is a large proportion of the population can't access that economic growth. So that gap between the rich and the poor is getting bigger. Okay, the wealthy are doing well and they're getting more wealthy. But the poor people, the people who don't have the education, who can't read and write, who can't access the jobs, there's more and more of those people as time is going by. Now, one of the things that this can lead to is migration. And we see the news stories all the time of people who are desperately trying to find a better life for themselves and their families in Europe. And unfortunately, a lot of those people don't make it. There have been some really terrible accidents out of sea, especially in the Mediterranean, with overcrowded boats, just like this one, packed full of what we call economic migrants. So some of these people might be refugees. Okay, so refugees are people who are fleeing because they are in fear of their own safety. Maybe their country is at war. Maybe they are being persecuted for a different reason, maybe because of their religion or their sexuality. In that case, they might be coming to Europe for safety, and when they get to Europe, they can claim asylum and they are a refugee. However, there are also people coming from the African continent who are what we call economic migrants. And economic migrants are people who are trying to get to Europe because they want a better life through having a job. Okay, so for themselves, for their family, they're leaving behind the country that they're from because there's no opportunities there for them to get a decent job, and they're coming to Europe because they're able to make more money and they're able to have a better quality of life. So if you go to this website, there is a bit of a case study looking at a young man who has migrated sort of through Africa into northern Africa and then tried to get across the Mediterranean Ocean. And there's a sort of a news article and a video, and it's worth your time going to that website, that web address, and having a little look at that. If we just sort of move on, we can see here just how big this migrant issue is becoming. Okay, so in 2014, we've got over 100,000 migrants from Africa trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea in order to reach Europe. And of those, 9,000 came from Nigeria. Okay, so unlike some of the countries in the north where people might be refugees, as we've just talked about, people from Nigeria tend to be economic migrants. Okay, but it's a long and dangerous journey. And if you look at where the arrow is going on this map, you can see that in order to get from Nigeria to the coast with the Mediterranean Sea, you have to cross the Sahara Desert. Okay, that is no easy thing to do. And if you read the the BBC article from the previous slide, you'll see when the young man is talking, he's talking about how lots of people died on that crossing across the Sahara because they didn't have enough food, didn't have enough water. Okay, so if that journey is so difficult and so dangerous, when you're trying to answer this bit here, what it tells you about economic development in Nigeria is that it's not working for everybody, because nobody is going to undertake a journey that is so dangerous that they could lose their life if they feel like there is opportunity in their own country. You know, they would stay in their own country if they could and they thought that there was anything there for them. So that's sort of quite a damning piece of evidence when we're talking about the development and the economic opportunities in Nigeria being available for everybody. Now, we need to be aware of what the future holds for Nigeria and whether or not people's quality of life will continue to improve. Now, Nigeria, just as the rest of the world, is battling with the coronavirus and the difficulties that the economy is facing here because of the coronavirus. We're seeing that as well in Nigeria. But I would recommend that you don't write about coronavirus in your answers. The examiner would not be expecting you to. So try to imagine a world where that isn't happening. Okay, so putting coronavirus to one side and thinking about the future for Nigeria, it has got a few problems on the horizon. Firstly, it's got an over-dependence on oil. Okay, so Nigeria produces a lot of oil, but oil can be very fickle. Okay, the price can go up and down. As the world is becoming more and more aware of the dangers of climate change, there's more and more investment in alternative energy sources. And in the future, we could see the price of oil going down again. Okay, and if that were to happen, and Nigeria is depending on it a great deal, then obviously Nigeria will see a fall to its economy. Okay, political. There is still corruption in Nigeria, and that needs to be completely gotten rid of, okay? Especially within the police. We've talked in lessons about the recent demonstrations in Nigeria as regards to the police and the lack of trust that people feel with the police force and with their politicians. So in order to carry on developing, they need a stable government that people feel they can trust. Okay, environmental problems. There's oil spills in the Niger Delta. There are a lot of pests and difficulties with livestock farming. And parts of the north, where it's much drier, and they are suffering from drought, the deserts are growing, so it's getting harder and harder to grow food. So there are environmental problems as well coming Nigeria's way. And finally, they have got social problems. Especially out in the rural areas, there's lots of different little tribes, and those tribes historically don't always get on. So sometimes fighting breaks out. There's also a divide between Christian and Muslim people. Generally speaking, the Christians tend to live in the south and the Muslims tend to live in the north. We've already spoken a bit in lessons about Boko Haram, the sort of Islamic fundamentalist terrorist group, and the problems that they've caused. But this is a sort of a bigger problem as well, especially when you consider the fact we've already talked about there being a north-south divide of wealth. So the Muslim north is generally poorer than the Christian south. So not only have you got that cultural and religious difference, you are bringing in a financial difference as well. And that obviously is going to really flare tempers up. So they need to find some kind of way to join together those different cultures and those different belief systems and spread that wealth more evenly. Okay, so let's finally have a little look at an exam question. So we've got here, evaluate to what extent economic development has improved people's quality of life in an LIC NEE you have studied. Okay, so we've got an evaluate question, so you are going to be saying what you think about it, and we have to talk about an LIC or NEE you have studied. So as I'm sure you all know by now, you are going to start this answer by saying that you have studied Nigeria, and you're going to say what you think about that sentence. And hopefully from today's lesson, you know that you would say, well, you know, the economic development has improved some people's quality of life, but other people are getting left behind. And to sort of put it all in a nutshell for you, you're going to have to write about the differences between the educated people and the uneducated people in Nigeria and how they do or don't have access to those different jobs that we've got with the economic growth. You could also talk about the difference between the development of the north and the south, okay, and the historical reasons behind that, okay. So you would therefore be able to do your sort of 2 paragraphs for your 6 marker, one based on people's education levels and one based on the idea of the more rural north and then the development that you've got in Lagos in the south. So please have a go at that question, hand it in on your assignment. Okay, that's it for today's lesson. Obviously, if you've got any problems with anything at all, then do drop your teacher an email and we will do everything we can to help you. Okay, see you soon. Bye.